All right, if you're gearing up for your AQA/AS psychology exam, you are in exactly the right place. In this explainer, we're going to get right into the nitty-gritty of what makes us tick. We're talking about the biological machinery that powers every single one of your thoughts, feelings, and actions. We'll start with the tiniest building blocks and build our way up, step by step, so you have a rock-solid understanding.
Here's our game plan for today. We'll kick off with the big picture ideas. Then we'll zoom right in on the star of the show, the neuron. We'll figure out how these incredible cells talk to each other through a process called synaptic transmission. And we'll look at the super important balance that keeps everything running just right. Then we'll zoom back out to see the entire nervous system before we finish up with a really crucial exam focus section. That's where we make sure you know how to use this knowledge to nail those questions. Let's do it. So, biopsychology. What's it all about? Well, at its heart, it's the idea that everything psychological is first and foremost biological. To really understand behavior, we've got to understand our own biology. Every single thing we do, whether it's solving a tough math problem or just feeling happy, it all has a physical basis. For your exam, the main focus is going to be the nervous system, and especially the brain. And the absolute #1 fundamental unit of that entire system is the neuron. Just think about that for a second. Your brain alone has about 100 billion of these things. So if you can get how this one little cell works, you've basically got the key to unlocking everything else we're going to talk about.
Okay, so let's get to know these building blocks. You've absolutely got to get your head around the neuron structure and the different types that exist, because, trust me, questions on this can pop up all over the exam paper.
Right, here's the official textbook definition you need to have in your back pocket. A neuron is a specialized cell, and it's the main component of the nervous system. The easiest way to think of it, it's like the body's electrical wiring. Its whole job is to conduct electrical impulses, which are basically messages, from one part of the body to another.
Okay, let's take a good look at this diagram because there's a lot of gold in here. Let's follow the journey of a signal. It all starts here, at the dendrites. See these branchy-looking bits? They receive signals from other neurons. That signal then gets processed in the cell body, which holds the nucleus. From there, it travels down this long tail-like thing called the axon. And notice how the axon is wrapped in this fatty layer? That's the myelin shield. Now look closely. The sheath has these little gaps in it. Those are the nodes of Ranvier, and they are super important. We'll see why in just a sec. The key thing to remember is that the impulse always travels in one direction. Dendrites, cell body, down the axon.
So, what's the deal with that gappy myelin sheath? It's all about one thing: speed. The electrical impulse doesn't just slide smoothly down the axon. Instead, it literally jumps from one node of Ranvier to the next. This leapfrogging action is called saltatory conduction, and it makes the signal travel ridiculously fast. And we're not talking a small improvement. This is what makes things like lightning-fast reflexes even possible. It's a massive biological advantage.
Now, not all neurons are the same. Their structure is perfectly adapted to their job. This table breaks down the 3 types you have to know. So imagine you touch something hot. Ow! That hot message zips from your fingertip to your spinal cord through a sensory neuron. They have long dendrites to pick up signals from way out in the body. Then, inside the spinal cord, a relay neuron acts like a switchboard operator, connecting the incoming message to the outgoing one. Finally, the command, "pull your hand away," shoots from the spinal cord out to your muscles through a motor neuron, which has a long axon to reach that muscle. So it's sensory in, relay connects, and motor out. So we know what a neuron is, and we know how a signal travels along one. But what happens when it gets to the end? How does it pass the message to the next neuron in line? Because they don't actually touch each other. This is where a totally different process kicks in, called synaptic transmission.
The key player here is the synapse. And really, all it is a super tiny gap, a microscopic space between the end of one neuron and the start of the next. Because there's a gap, the electrical signal can't just jump across. To get the message over the divide, it has to completely change its form. The message switches from being electrical to being chemical.
Let's just get our bearings on this diagram. Up top here, we have the end of the first neuron, which we call the presynaptic terminal. All those little dots inside are the chemical messengers, called neurotransmitters, and they're stored in tiny sacs. This space in the middle, that's the synaptic gap. And down at the bottom is the start of the next neuron, and it's covered in these special landing pads called receptors, which are designed to catch those neurotransmitters. Okay, let's walk through the steps of what happens. First, the electrical impulse speeds down the axon and arrives at the presynaptic terminal. This arrival causes the little sacs, or vesicles, to release their neurotransmitters into the synaptic gap. These chemical messengers then float across that tiny space. They then dock onto the specific receptors on the next neuron. It's like a key fitting perfectly into a lock. And if enough of them lock in, boom, a brand new electrical impulse is triggered in that next neuron, and the message continues on its journey.
Now, this whole process isn't just about passing a message on. Sometimes, the most important job is to stop a message from being passed on. This is where we get into the brain's on and off switches, or what we call excitation and inhibition.
The crucial point here is that different neurotransmitters have one of two effects. An excitatory neurotransmitter, like acetylcholine, is basically a green light. It makes the inside of the next neuron more positively charged, which hypes it up and makes it more likely to fire off an impulse. It's a go signal. On the other hand, an inhibitory neurotransmitter, like GABA, is a red light. It makes the inside of the neuron more negative, which calms it down and makes it less likely to fire. It's a stop signal.
And this is so important to remember, especially for your essays. Our ability to think and feel and act isn't just about neurons firing constantly. It's about this incredibly delicate, finely tuned balance between these go and stop signals. That's what allows for complex thoughts.
And to see why this matters in the real world, just think about a condition like epilepsy. Some forms of it are believed to be caused by an imbalance where there's way too much excitation, too many go signals, and not enough inhibition. This leads to a storm of uncontrolled firing in the brain. It really shows you just how critical this balance is for our health.
Okay, so we've looked at the tiny details of how individual cells connect and communicate. Now it's time to zoom all the way back out. How do these billions of neurons all fit together to form the grand design of the nervous system?
At the very top level, the nervous system splits into two main parts. First, you've got the central nervous system, or CNS. This is mission control. It's just the brain and the spinal cord. That's it. Everything else, all the nerves that branch out from the spinal cord to your fingers, your organs, your senses, that's all part of the peripheral nervous system, or PNS. It's the vast network that connects the CNS to the rest of your body and the outside world.
Okay, let's put this knowledge into practice. A common trick in the exam is to ask you to apply what you know about one specific part of the system. So let's break down how to answer a question on relay neurons to make absolutely sure you walk away with full marks. So, here's a classic 2-mark question. Outline the function of relay neurons. Seems simple, but it's easy to fall into a trap here. And here is the key. You have to read the question carefully. It asks for function. It wants to know what the relay neuron does. It is not asking what it looks like. If you start writing about short dendrites and short axons, you'll get 0 marks. For 2 marks, you need to make 2 clear, separate points about its job. So, here is a perfect model answer that would get you both marks. Notice it's got 2 distinct points about function. Point 1. Relay neurons connect sensory neurons to motor neurons. You could also add that they connect to other relay neurons. That's 1 mark in the bag. Point 2. They are found within the brain and spinal cord, the CNS, and their job is to interconnect different parts of the CNS. Bam! That's your 2nd mark. So let's just quickly recap the whole journey. We started with the foundation, the individual neuron. Then we looked at the action, the amazing chemical process of synaptic transmission that lets them talk to each other. And finally, we saw the grand design, the entire nervous system that all these parts build together.
And I'll leave you with a final thought to connect all of this to wider psychology. We've seen this precise, beautifully balanced chemical process. So, what happens when something interferes with it? How is it that psychoactive drugs, which work by messing with these exact neurotransmitters, can completely change our behavior, our thoughts, and our entire perception of reality? It's something to think about.